Attraction has never followed the moral rules people repeat in order to feel virtuous. That truth is uncomfortable, which is why most people avoid it. Yet it has always been there, operating quietly beneath social narratives, romantic ideals, and emotional expectations. From the very beginning, Machiavelli understood something that still disturbs people today. Human beings do not respond to good intentions alone. They respond to the strength they perceive behind those intentions. In the emotional and relational domain, the same principle applies. It does not matter how much care you believe you are giving, how sincere your feelings are, or how morally correct your behavior seems, if what you communicate underneath is weakness, emotional dependence, or fear of loss. Attraction does not activate, it retreats. Attraction is not awakened by sacrifice, by constant availability, or by endless reassurance. It is awakened by structure, by direction, by calm self-control. This is where the first major clash with popular belief occurs. Most people are taught, explicitly or implicitly, that treating others well means giving in, adapting endlessly, explaining yourself repeatedly, justifying every decision, softening every boundary, and placing yourself one step behind so as not to disturb or upset anyone. This behavior is often labeled kindness, empathy, or emotional maturity, but in reality, this is not respect. It is the slow abandonment of personal authority. Machiavelli warned that anyone who cannot govern himself will eventually be governed by others. This is not a political metaphor alone. It applies directly to emotional relationships. When your internal world revolves around pleasing someone else, you lose your center. When you lose your center, you lose coherence. When coherence disappears, respect erodes. And where there is no respect, desire cannot survive. Self-control is the foundation of all authority. Authority is not attractive because it dominates, intimidates, or suppresses. It is attractive because it creates stability. Human beings are drawn to what feels stable. What is unstable creates anxiety. What is reactive creates tension. What is firm creates trust. Machiavelli never advocated for love at any cost. On the contrary, he understood that love without respect is fragile, volatile, and ultimately dangerous. The same law governs attraction. When you give yourself without limits, when you explain excessively, when you constantly seek validation, you communicate a silent but powerful message. I need more than I choose. Need has never been attractive. Choice is. There is a profound difference between staying because you must and staying because you choose, between caring because you fear loss and caring because it aligns with your values, between sharing yourself and dissolving yourself. Treating someone well does not mean abandoning your identity. It does not mean silencing your judgment. It does not mean negotiating your values for attention. True presence is grounded. It is not desperate. It is not anxious. It is not performative. Machiavelli understood that effective leadership does not come from pleasing everyone, but from holding a clear internal line, even when that line creates discomfort. In attraction, that same discomfort, that slight unpredictability, that absence of total emotional access is what keeps interest alive. People are not drawn to those who empty themselves to fill others. They are drawn to those who are whole and share from abundance. Giving too much too early does not communicate devotion. It communicates urgency, and urgency erodes desire. Calmness, on the other hand, strengthens attraction. The individual who does not rush, does not chase, and does not emotionally collapse projects a quiet strength that does not need explanation or proof. This leads to the first foundational principle. The way you treat others is born from how you govern yourself. If there is no inner order, there is no magnetism. If there are no boundaries, there is no respect. And without respect, everything else is illusion. Machiavelli understood this clearly. Before governing any bond, one must first govern oneself. The second principle is even more uncomfortable because it directly challenges the ego. Desire does not respond to emotional fairness, it responds to perceived power. This does not mean dominance, it does not mean control, it means position. Machiavelli explained that public favor is not maintained through endless concessions, but through a stable image that does not bend to every demand. In emotional dynamics, the same pattern emerges. When you constantly attempt to prove that you are more attentive, more understanding, more accommodating, you do not increase your value, you diminish it. Excessive effort communicates lack, and lack weakens position. Attraction requires friction, not destructive conflict, but difference, not chaos, but resistance. When everything is immediate, guaranteed, and effortless, the mind stops investing. Machiavelli understood that what is obtained without cost is rarely protected. In relationships, when your time, attention, and emotional energy are endlessly available, they lose symbolic weight. Not because they are worthless, but because they require no choice. Interest is not pursuit. Interest is clarity, presence, and consistency. Pursuit is insisting without reciprocity, explaining without being asked, justifying without accusation. Each time this happens, psychological ground is surrendered. Not because the other person is malicious, but because the human mind interprets insistence as imbalance. Machiavelli would have stated it plainly: whoever exposes himself excessively becomes vulnerable to silent contempt. There is an unspoken law in attraction. The one who needs less controls the rhythm. This is not manipulation, it is structure. The individual who can walk away without emotional collapse holds the advantage, not because they threaten loss, but because they are not ruled by fear of it. Conscious detachment is not coldness, it is inner sovereignty. When your identity is not tied to the outcome, your presence becomes heavier, more grounded, and harder to ignore. Machiavelli warned that a ruler must avoid being despised. In emotional bonds, contempt is born when others sense that you will tolerate anything to stay, when there are no consequences, no limits, no internal line. Value does not fall because kindness is absent. It falls because backbone is absent. Respect is not requested. It is communicated through behavior. This brings us to the principle of boundaries. A boundary is not rejection, it is structure. Power without limits collapses from within, and so does attraction. When everything is allowed, when nothing has consequence, connection loses shape. And what has no shape becomes habit, not desire. A boundary is not punishment or manipulation, it is a silent declaration of value. It says, "This is who I am. This is what I accept. This is what I do not." Without this clarity, the other person does not feel held, they feel lost. The human mind requires outlines to orient itself emotionally. Machiavelli understood that laws must be predictable, even if actions are flexible. That predictability creates stability. In emotional dynamics, firmness, not volatility, creates security. When boundaries shift based on fear, resentment accumulates. Silent resentment is the most destructive poison in any bond. Setting boundaries means accepting a difficult truth. Not everyone will stay, and that is acceptable. Fear of loss is what leads people to betray themselves. Machiavelli warned that ruling from fear inevitably leads to collapse. Boundaries are not announced through speeches, they are communicated through action, through consistency, through leaving when lines are crossed, through silence when respect disappears. Consequences, not words, educate perception. Boundaries create more security than endless permissiveness. Mercy without order leads to contempt. Tolerance without criteria produces the same outcome, Self-respect is visible even when unnamed. It is felt in tone, in rhythm, in response. When you no longer need to justify every emotional decision, you project calm authority, not because it dominates, but because it brings order. This leads to the principle of silence and controlled absence. Machiavelli understood that power is exercised not by reacting to everything, but by choosing when to act and when not to. The belief that everything must be clarified immediately comes from anxiety, not care. Silence is not punishment, it is space, it is restraint. Presence is a choice, constant availability is erosion. Silence creates gravity, it allows perception to work, it preserves depth. Explaining too much often reveals insecurity. Inner power tolerates misunderstanding without panic. Control of rhythm is essential. Rushing intimacy weakens structure. What matures too fast often decays just as quickly. Consistency outweighs intensity. Intensity excites briefly. Consistency sustains. Emotional peaks impress, but coherence builds trust. Fluctuation erodes credibility. Predictable values create calm, and calm sustains desire. Machiavelli warned against rulers who spoke more than they acted. In attraction, words without alignment collapse value. Consistency means not betraying yourself for closeness. Respect grows when others see that your standards do not move based on reaction. Calm reliability is stronger than emotional spectacle. Finally, the most decisive principle, choosing without attachment to outcome. The moment your well-being depends on another's response, control is lost. Choosing without attachment does not mean indifference, it means freedom. You stay because you want to. You leave because you can. This freedom is felt instantly. The ability to walk away without inner collapse transforms presence. You no longer cling, you no longer negotiate dignity. Machiavelli understood that the ruler willing to lose support preserves authority. Emotionally, this translates to self-respect. Not every bond deserves continuation. Selection is care for yourself. True attraction emerges when two complete individuals choose each other, not when one dissolves into the other. Do not seek to be chosen by sacrificing yourself. Choose without losing yourself. That quiet certainty, the knowledge that you can stay or leave without breaking, is one of the highest forms of power that exists.